Hey guys, I'm wearing my murder shows and jumpy clothes shirt, so we're gonna watch BuzzFeed Unsolved True Crime, the Tinseltown murder of Thelma Todd. There's a suicide thingy, because apparently this talks about suicide.
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we look into the death of 20s and 30s Hollywood starlet Thelma Todd. Another murder in her own backyard.
Oh, that's some gravitas there.
It's just sad.
Hollywood was just silent films then.
A lot of silent slapstick, and then a lot of
silent films to talkies.
Murdering going on behind
Well,
the
the
scenes.
city was figuring itself out, you know.
And
Do we
everyone
want
was
to be
on
a
drugs,
movie
too.
town? Do we want to be a murder town? And in the end, it figured out, let's do it all.
20s and 30s crime, you got the old 20s and 30s mustache on your face. Shall we jump into the case file?
Let's do it.
Let's get into it.
In 1906, Thelma Alice Todd was born in Lawrence, Massachusetts. She trained to become a school teacher while doing some modeling on the side, and in 1925 won the title of Miss Massachusetts. After her win, Paramount Pictures signed Todd to a one-year contract that set her Hollywood career in motion. Over the next decade, Todd made a name for herself as a talented comedic actress, playing leads in films with the Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, and Zazu Pitts. Her
I only recognize the first two celebrity thingies.
rise in Hollywood, however, was no walk in the park. One of
Of course it
Todd's early
wasn't.
contracts involved a clause that specified her weight at the time of signing,
Dude.
122 pounds, and that if she gained more than 3 or lost more than 6 pounds from that
Come
mark,
on.
the contract could be terminated.
Stupid.
Hollywood's concern with her weight resulted in Todd becoming addicted to diet pills.
I mean, I'm getting
Not good.
I'm
Bad.
getting concerned about my weight too. I should probably do a little bit more exercising. But we have dogs, and I don't want to go try doing jogs when the dogs won't leave me the fuck alone.
Don't do it. Don't just eat body positivity. I got it out there. Hey,
Nailed it.
hey, love your body every day.
Yeah.
Wake
and
up, smile.
try and exercise
That's right.
regularly.
Wink at yourself in the mirror. Grow a mustache if you
A
got
little
it.
bit exercise.
Between 1932 and 1934, Todd was married to agent Pat DeSico, a union which could hardly be described as happy. When Todd filed for divorce, she cited the reason as, quote, grievous mental and physical suffering, end quote.
Yikes.
Todd also found herself fighting against typical Hollywood casting couch situations, even at the threat of being blacklisted. She refused to entertain producers at parties and was outspoken about her experiences.
Good for her.
Nevertheless, Todd was known as a fun-loving party girl, extremely popular in the LA social circuit, carrying on multiple love affairs with men, and often overheard ordering her signature drink, 3 Fingers of Rye.
3 fingers of rye, that's a lot.
Holy moly. I drink 3 fingers of rye. I'm on the roof.
That's like 3 fingers of rye.
Just for context,
Yeah.
that's now whiskey.
You know, I like whiskey, but I'm not drinking 3 fingers of rye.
I mean, I'm not drinking 3 fingers of rye.
I feel like you are.
I'm drinking 10 fingers, baby.
Every time we go out to a bar, Ryan's like, give me a pint glass full of whiskey.
Yeah, that's a
Nah.
hell of a signature drink.
Yeah, you know what? That's good bourbon.
She was known for elevating the typical dumb blonde stereotype in her films, often playing independent women, rare in early Hollywood shorts
Cool.
at the time. Wary about being used in films simply for her looks, Todd once said in an interview, quote, building on beauty seems to me the worst thing any girl can do,
Yeah.
end quote.
Seems like a cool lady. I would have liked to party with her and maybe have one of her signature
I'm
drinks.
actually just realizing that this sucks because this episode's about her, so
Yeah.
this cool lady is,
Yeah, it's gonna end not well.
Forgot what we were doing.
Forgot
here.
what show we were on.
I've recalled and now I'm sad.
You know, I'll say this about this lady. She was obviously a beautiful woman, did not want to rest on that, as evidenced by what I just said, but also she was able to do things her way without getting blacklisted, which is also admirable because sometimes, especially back then and even now, when you were a woman, it would be taken out on you and it didn't
Yeah.
happen for her. So that's actually pretty goddamn cool.
Acting was not Todd's only pursuit. In 1934, Todd opened the successful restaurant, Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe, on the Pacific Coast Highway. Her business partners in the venture were director and producer Roland West, with whom Todd had been having an on-again, off-again affair for the past 3 years, and silent film actress Jewel Carmen, who was also Roland West's wife.
They had a little love triangle.
Oh, saucy.
And then they thought, let's open up a restaurant.
I smell a sitcom.
Regardless of what they were doing, they were free loving.
Business, pleasure. Oh, mix them together. Why not? You know
I
what
would
I'm
like to
talking
see you never mix those together ever again.
about? I mean, that's what they were doing.
That's what they could do. That's what you should never do in front of me.
You imagine going to that restaurant and be like, I'd like a cheeseburger, and they'd be like, we'll get that to you in a sec after we finish doing it.
Just watch it sweat off their brow.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, a little extra sauce on this one.
Ew.
Todd kept an apartment above the cafe, as did the West Carmens,
That's
with only a single
awesome.
drawing room separating the units. In a detail that will come into play later, West and Carmen also shared a house about 500 yards from the cafe. On Saturday,
this is
December
not gonna be
14th,
awesome.
1935, Todd attended a party thrown in her honor at Cafe Trocadero, a popular nightclub on Hollywood's Sunset Strip. Attendees said Todd seemed to be having a great time at the party, sipping brandy and champagne, and at one point betting some friends a free dinner that they wouldn't visit her restaurant the next day.
I love free food.
I do too. Tastes very free every time.
Fries.
And that's the best.
I'd eat free food off of, well, never mind, I don't want to.
Get into it.
Roland West had asked Todd to be home by 2 a.m., and at 1:50 a.m., Todd asked famous theater manager Sid Grauman to call West and inform
Grauman's
him
Chinese
she'd be
theater?
leaving soon. Regardless, Todd stayed at the party until around 3:15 a.m. Todd's chauffeur, Ernest Peters, dropped the starlet off at the roadside cafe sometime between 3 a.m. and 4:20 a.m. Sunday, the friends Todd had bet wouldn't show up came to collect their free dinners. Though no one had seen Todd at the restaurant, the friends nevertheless enjoyed a comped meal. The next
nice.
day, December 16th, Todd's maid, Mae Whitehead, began her morning routine, which included getting Todd's Lincoln Phaeton ready from Roland West's home and bringing it down to Todd at the apartment above the cafe. When Whitehead opened the garage, she found the body of Thelma Todd, slumped over the steering wheel with a broken nose and 2 cracked ribs.
Oh, she
Todd's
was beat up.
obituary in the LA Times described the scene in graphic detail. Coagulated blood marred the screen comedian's features and stained her mauve and silver evening gown and her expensive mink coat when she was found. Her blonde locks pathetically awry in the front seat of her
Dude.
automobile in the garage of Roland West.
Ay, ay, ay. This is a bummer. She seemed like I was having fun with her.
In her honor, maybe
Yeah.
we could try and figure out what happened to her.
Or maybe do a fun little screening? A little marathon?
Or we could try and figure
Or
out what happened
both.
to her. 'Cause that's what we're here to do. That's why we're behind the desk.
That's right.
With more than a day unaccounted for between when she was last seen alive and first seen dead, it's time to dive into theories about what happened to Thelma Todd. Our first theory is the official grand jury verdict of her death, that Thelma Todd died of accidental carbon monoxide poisoning. It was
Yeah,
a cold
I'm pressing
evening in
extra
the
doubt
middle
on
of
this
December.
one.
Her apartment was near the ocean, and Todd was wearing a lightweight gown, though she also had a mink coat. It's assumed that upon arriving home early Sunday morning, Todd was locked out of the building her apartment was in and went to the garage of West's house, where she got into and turned on the car to stay warm, making the fatal mistake of leaving the engine running with the garage door shut.
I mean, we're going to get to the obvious,
Yes.
which is that generally carbon monoxide poisoning doesn't result in broken
Broken
ribs.
nose and
Yeah.
yeah. You know, that is a good point. Perhaps you're not the idiot I figure you do. Maybe you do have a detective brain.
I do, I'm very observant.
Big brain, big head, big hair.
Yeah.
All three in tandem. You're the triad of detectives.
My brain is large. Has many synapses.
I could already hear people typing away and making that into a GIF.
The county autopsy surgeon Dr. A.F. Wagner fixed Todd's time of death about 5 a.m. Sunday morning. The New York Times quoted Dr. Wagner as saying, quote, "The autopsy showed monoxide poison to the extent of 70% of total saturation in her blood. There may have been other contributing causes, but that definitely was the major factor."
Yeah.
End quote. It's
I don't
interesting
think
Dr.
so.
Wagner mentions how there may have been other
think it was
contributing
murder.
causes, as there are some notable details that may point away from an accident.
Yeah,
For instance,
obviously.
while it's possible Todd's nose could have broken as she slumped unconscious onto the steering wheel, it is
Yeah, it
harder
looked
to
like a
say
broken
how Todd
nose.
sustained 2 cracked ribs.
Yeah.
Trying to entertain the idea that she could have somehow done that herself. It seems tricky. maybe she could have fallen outside somewhere and then was like, oh, I'm
That is
so
where my mind went.
injured. Let me take a seat in the car. Oh, it's chilly. I'll turn the car on. I mean, was she potentially inebriated
she was
at this
drunk.
point? Yeah, it seems far-fetched. However I try to figure it, it doesn't work.
I'm not sold. Not buying it.
Todd was also known for her interest in cars, and there was apparently a media campaign informing the public about carbon monoxide poisoning.
She would
It
have
seems
not to
highly
do
likely
that.
Todd would have known the dangers of running a car in a closed garage. There's also the question of how Todd wound up in the garage in the first place.
Yeah.
Todd would have had to trek up the hill from her apartment to Roland West's garage. Her shoes, however, were not consistent with having walked 500 yards on uneven ground in the damp
Uneven
night.
ground.
Additionally, when her body was found, her hair was still neatly styled for the party at the Trocadero, not as tousled as one would expect after walking through the reportedly windy evening air.
This is what I meant about her not maybe taking a tumble, because she had heels on. The hill that she would have to walk up to get to the garage was substantial.
Yeah.
No dirt on her shoes, nothing on her gown that would suggest a fall. Her
Yeah.
hair still styled. It was a windy night. Seems much more consistent that she was placed in the car as
Shady.
opposed to getting there herself.
Yeah.
Especially in a drunken stupor.
I know also, though, sometimes they're, the hair back then, very firm.
Yes, yes.
Wasn't that the
Firm.
60s?
And look, when I've been drunk at the end of a night, I've done some funny things to get into like my bedroom if I forgot my key, but even still, don't think I would be capable of doing that while still looking intact for the most
You
part.
make strange decisions. I one night I was very cold. I slept in my trunk
One night I was
Yeah.
very cold and I slept outside the front door,
like a little dog.
like a little dog,
That's pretty funny.
because I couldn't get in.
Well, we've slept places.
One time I got locked out of my house, like this house, when it was like still getting some work done. Because I was like, hey, did my folks come home? So I went outside to check to see if they were home or not. The door closed behind me. It locked behind me. I was locked out of the house, but luckily some windows didn't have like the window glass in yet, so I just like climbed through the windows.
And I tell you what, my hair was very tousled.
West himself seemed to think Todd's actions were a bit suspicious. Apparently, although Todd had been locked out of her apartment before, she had never walked to the garage or attempted to sleep in her car. West testified that Todd was fully aware she could have woken him up to gain entry, even citing an example of one case when Todd had broken a window to gain his attention.
Maybe I could see this if you had messed up while drunk once before. You don't want to do it again.
Yeah, like, oh, what a
Yeah.
racket I made last time.
Yeah.
Roland was awful sore about it.
Yeah.
No window breaking this time.
I'll go to the garage instead. Cozy up in a car, something that young Shane Madej even did.
Yeah,
You did not turn on the engine, though.
I did not.
Not
Nor
that
did you have
dumb.
broken ribs, as far as I know.
No broken ribs, never broken a bone.
Big bones, hard to break.
No. Unless he's bluffing,
Well, we don't know.
Yeah, you guys better look into this.
What's the next theory?
Well, look over there, maybe. What about that guy?
I don't know. I've never been accused of murder before. So.
Yet.
Yeah.
Perhaps no one was more confounded to hear Todd had died early Sunday morning than one Mrs. Martha Ford. Ford was throwing a party at her home in Laurel Canyon and reported to police that she received a phone call from Todd on Sunday afternoon, saying she was on her way with a surprise guest.
Who was the
Ford even
surprise
claimed
guest?
Todd told her, quote, "I went to a party last night and I'm still in my evening clothes. Do you mind?" End quote. Ford put the call around 4 p.m., around 11 hours after the coroner pegged the time of Todd's death.
Huh.
Ford told the New York Times, quote, "I've known Todd for years, and I couldn't be mistaken," end quote, and that she was, quote, "positive beyond all question," end quote, that it was Todd on the phone.
Okay. All right.
Plot thickens.
Yes, thick. Something that didn't occur to me is that the coroner or the LAPD might be
Could
dirty.
Could
Yeah.
be dirty.
Yeah.
Or
I've seen LA Confidential.
This
I know
lady-
how it works. And Chinatown.
she could be lying, telling a little fib.
Did you hear her?
Why?
We got more details on her? Is she
No,
known?
but
I
back
mean,
then people were known to throw themselves into controversy just for the notoriety
get
and
it-
for the
get some
publicity.
ink.
Yes, for the ink. And as somebody who's throwing parties in the hills, maybe she wants to get her name out there a little bit more.
I like that nowadays they're like, let's steer clear of the murder stuff. They're like Tom Hiddleston will date Taylor Swift for a week and they'll look like a couple of assholes on a beach wearing shirts. That's all they gotta do. Nobody's gotta murder each other to get in the papers, you know?
Though if Tom Hiddleston did murder somebody, he would be in the papers.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Loki? Nah.
I mean, there's a darkness in him.
Which Loki are
I
you
don't
talking
think
about?
he's a murderer, for the record.
Though a police officer testified that no phone records showed any calls had been made from Todd's property on Sunday, it's easy to imagine Todd could have used a different phone.
Yeah.
Still, Ford's insistence on having spoken to Todd is not the only wrinkle in the timeline. Todd's autopsy found peas and carrots in the starlet's stomach, neither of which had been served at the Trocadero party. The peas had just started to digest at the time of her death, which could suggest Todd had been picked up again after being dropped off by Peters, taken to eat somewhere else, and then taken back to West's garage to die.
I cannot imagine.
Your last meal being peas and carrots?
Yeah.
It's like a bunny rabbit.
Especially after a night of partying.
I mean, that's
no
not
one's
even a
woken
healthy
up eating
thing.
peas and carrots.
Peas and carrots are a healthy thing to eat. I should probably have some peas and carrots.
That stinks.
Just being blasted, like, I need some peas and carrots, stat.
With all
It's
of
healthy.
these factors surrounding the possibility of Todd's death being an accident, nothing is more confounding than the contents of her purse. Found next to her in the car, her bag contained lipstick, a cigarette case, some handkerchiefs, and a coin purse which itself contained the key to the side door of her apartment
What?
Why is that confounding? That
Because
makes
why
sense.
was she in the garage?
Because somebody fucking killed her.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Oh,
We
okay.
know somebody killed her. We're trying to list reasons why somebody maybe didn't
Yeah,
kill her.
somebody, spoiler alert, somebody murdered her.
Yeah, she has a key to get into her house.
And they got away with it.
Have you ever been so drunk you didn't remember you had your key on you? I haven't.
No, that hasn't happened to me. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was murdered.
I actually have forgotten that I had keys in my purse. One time I even forgot I had choke chains in my purse for, like, goat showing.
Yeah, I think so too.
With all of these complicating factors, it makes sense that the coroner's jury verdict read, quote, "The death of the deceased appears to have been accidental, but we recommend further investigation to be made in this case by the proper authorities," end quote.
Yeah.
And while we may not be the proper authorities, further investigation is exactly what we're going to do.
Good, we'll do what they couldn't. Here's how it works, though. You're a powerful man in Hollywood. You're a piece of shit. You got an axe to grind with a young starlet. You wipe her off the map. You pay off the people who should be doing the investigating, swept under the rug.
So do you think this coroner got some heat?
Maybe, I don't know, but I'm sure he got a little grease on his palm for this one.
Got
Yeah.
some salad?
Yeah,
Got a couple leaves for a salad?
yeah. A couple of queens in that fat pocket of his.
I could see that.
Yeah,
Little bones in his graveyard.
sure. Yeah, I like that.
Our next theory is that Thelma Todd intentionally killed herself
I'm
in the
pressing
garage
next to
of her
doubt.
lover. In addition to her having the key to her apartment building with her when she died,
I
her
doubt this
chauffeur
one.
said Todd was unusually quiet as he drove her home that night. He reported that she did not
Was she sleepy?
ask him to escort her to her door as she usually did. One source also claimed Todd had received an upsetting message from an anonymous person on the night of the party. With her interest in cars, Todd would likely have known running a car in her garage would result in her death. This theory is, however, admittedly thin, and her actions
Yeah,
had
I'm
not
pressing
aligned
X to
with
doubt this
self-destructive
theory.
behavior around the time of her death. Her restaurant was a hot new success. She had recently signed a new film contract, and the trunk of her car was full of Christmas presents for family and friends.
Yep.
The host of the party at the
Were those Christmas presents ever delivered?
Trocadero also said that Todd told her she was newly involved with a man in San Francisco.
I know I listed a bunch of reasons why she would not commit suicide there. I will say this though, that doesn't mean anything usually. You don't know what's going on inside someone's head. That
Yeah.
Talk to them, which should be a lesson to everybody out there.
Me, I don't like talking to people I care about. That's my personal
Wait,
preference.
you never talked to me.
Yeah,
Do you care about me?
clearly.
That's crazy because I don't care about you.
Oh,
Our third theory is, of course, that Thelma Todd was murdered.
Yeah, she was
It's
probably
unlikely
murdered.
she was killed by a stranger who wanted to rob her, as none of the jewelry she had been wearing was missing. Though there are some particular suspects we want to bring up. The first is Roland West, her lover in whose garage Todd's body was found. West was said to be a jealous man, and Todd and West opened their popular cafe so they could spend more time together. If Todd had actually begun dating a new man in San Francisco, West may have been hypocritically upset. On his deathbed, West actually admitted to being responsible for Todd's death and accidentally locking her in the garage. His recounting of the events which occurred that night, however, was full of inconsistencies and contradictions.
Yeah, it's an odd thing to admit. There's a bunch of inconsistencies. The ocean is down the hill. You could dispose of it that way, but I guess he's not thinking straight. It's
Can't
not worth
dispose in the ocean.
better than
Tide just kicks it all back up.
rather than leaving her in the garage, in your own garage.
Well, clearly that seemed to work. I mean,
Fair enough.
Nobody got the cuff slapped on him, so.
It's a weird thing to admit. Definitely not worth glossing over.
Yeah.
But somehow I still don't buy it. I don't know why.
Well, but him locking her in the garage wouldn't necessarily.
Well, if he
just
knocked her out, then
Yeah.
turned the car on, then locked her in the garage.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes
It seems like a weird way to do it, though, to be quite honest.
That really
Another
explained her
suspect is Jewel
broken
Carmen,
nose.
Roland West's wife. While a jealous wife might sound like an obvious suspect into her husband's mistress's death, it is said she did not resent her husband's affair. Instead, the Chicago Tribune claimed Carmen threatened to kill Todd for squandering money at the restaurant in which she, her husband, and Todd were business partners. Beyond a potential motive, however, there is no physical evidence Carmen was involved in Todd's death.
So Jewel Carmen's beef with Thelma Todd wasn't over the affair necessarily as much as it was over money from the business. that
Yeah,
they
but
owe.
what's murder gonna fix?
Yeah.
You know?
Nothing.
Right.
Obviously,
I
maybe
guess
you're
it could have been like a fit of rage,
Yeah,
like
you
I'm
guys-
pissed at you
Yeah.
for skimming a little off the top. Seems a little obvious.
circumstantial,
Yeah.
no real evidence, just a motive.
Yeah, not enough to it there.
You could make the argument that after Todd is out of the picture, Jewel Carmen and now Roland West have full ownership of the cafe, though it is called Thelma Todd's Roadside Cafe.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah.
that's more work for you. You know? Yeah. Who wants that?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not buying
I
it.
have
The
so many
third
projects.
suspect in a potential murder is Todd's ex-husband, Pat DeSico, a self-described, quote, agent with underworld connections, end quote.
Might be
Jesus,
him.
who describes himself as an agent with underworld connections?
I do generally.
When have you ever slipped that into a casual
It's on my business
conversation?
card.
Agent with underworld connections?
Yeah.
Shame a day, agent with underworld connections. Nice to meet you. Let's talk about this Prius I'm trying to sell you.
DeSico was said to have a violent temper, and his second wife, heiress Gloria Vanderbilt, described him as a brute with a bad temper who would physically abuse her when he was drunk.
Not a surprise that DeSico shows up here, and not a surprise that he was a human garbage pile.
Yeah, flaming in the garbage pile.
I mean,
Yep.
if he, picked up a young starlet as his wife, knowing
Yeah.
the system, probably not a nice guy.
I can't
No.
think of a colder take than a guy who puts hands on women. Not a good dude.
I called him a pile of garbage.
Yeah, I know. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. It's like it's very obvious.
Hot take?
Hot take. Hot take there. I don't think this guy's a good guy.
The night before her death
My
at
eyes
the
just itchy.
Trocadero, Todd ran into DeSico. Many eyewitnesses said their interaction seemed heated. When summoned for the grand jury, DeSico testified that he hadn't heard about Todd's death. In Todd's will, dated from when they were still married, DeSico was left $1.
Damn.
It's kind of like, at that point, don't leave him anything at all, but it's a sick burn. It's a sick burn, right?
Yeah.
A fourth suspect, one that was especially popular at the time, is that mobster Lucky Luciano had put a hit out on Todd. Earlier in 1935, Todd received a string of 8 letters threatening her life if she didn't pay $10,000, signed by the, quote, Ace of Hearts, end quote.
Don't blackmail people.
I think he was the ex-husband.
I mean, one, it's illegal.
And if you're gonna do it, get a better pseudonym than Ace of Hearts.
Ace of Hearts.
That's a shitty
It's not even
alias.
threatening.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
After a suspect was arrested in August 1935, however, the letters stopped. Nevertheless, Todd, who was found dead 4 months later, was convinced the whole ordeal was mob-related. Many speculated Luciano had wanted to set up a high-ticket casino on the 3rd floor of her restaurant, but Todd refused, resulting in her murder. This theory supposes that after she was dropped off at the cafe, someone with ties to Luciano picked her up again, took her out to eat, killed her, and put her in West's garage afterwards, which could explain the peas found in her stomach and her 2 cracked ribs. While it appears Luciano left Los Angeles abruptly shortly after Todd's death, never to return, it should be noted that this entire theory is merely speculation.
Yeah.
In reality, there is no evidence that Todd and Luciano ever actually met.
Lucky he's shown up here before, yes?
He's shown
Yeah.
up in a couple cases.
Yeah, that's
namely the Bugsy Siegel case.
Yes. Oh, this guy got around. I guess if you're a mob man in early Los Angeles,
And your fingers are in a bunch of different
people
pots.
finger you for a lot of different things, huh?
Yep.
That's a verb.
It is.
That means what it
It
means.
does mean what you said it means. Lots of different pots.
Dude!
Was that you putting fingers in pies or pots?
I don't know.
Gone at age 29, Thelma Todd was in the midst of a successful Hollywood career, tragically cut short. While her death was officially ruled an accident, there
Accident
are
my
enough
ass.
suspicious incongruencies in her final hours to keep her story alive these more than 80 years later. Whether accident, suicide, or murder, what actually happened to the starlet that night after leaving the Sunset Strip remains unsolved.
Out of all these theories, which one do you think is the most likely?
I'm gonna go with, honestly, it seems like, to me, she was possibly assaulted and then placed in the car, maybe not very conscious. Car was turned on. That was that.
I too believe it was murder.
Yeah.
If I had to say who it was, probably the ex-husband. But
Same.
no, I can't say that. Seems pretty cut and dry.
Tough to end a sad episode, huh?
It was an
Yeah.
untimely end to an otherwise very cool lady.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll just leave it at that. All right, people.
See you next week.
I'm pretty sure it was the ex-husband. Who do you think killed her? How do you think she died? I'll see you in the next one.